Heyo, Outliers, Niiamah Ashong here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey here today. I am thrilled to be able to be in space with you here. It's been a good day, and I'm excited that we get to be with you here. Today we brought on an incredible outlier, trailblazer, who's been at the game for a number of years and keeps finding ways to expand and grow, and actually just like take things to new levels. And so I'm really, really good. I'm really, really excited that we have Loz on the show with us. Loz, thank you so much for being here. I want to get to know you more. I want Outliers to get to know you more. You mind letting us know more about you and the game that you're playing right now?
Well, my name is actually Lauren, so the fact that I go by the name Loz is a very Australian thing to do. We have a
Mm.
habit of shortening everybody's name, so you'd be like Nia. We just call you that, man. But I am an OG ADHDer from way back in the 90s. I got diagnosed with ADHD before it was cool. And I don't know about your listeners, but everybody now seems to be wanting to pursue a positive diagnosis of ADD to get medicated. I'm like, dude, I don't need medication. Like, I've channeled that into entrepreneurship. So I am a lycra loving, badass business chick who is invested heavily in being completely obsessed with helping people optimize their life across their eating, their breathing, their sleep, their movement, and their hydration. I call these handbrake habits because they act as handbrakes in our life. But when people get to work with someone like me, they get to experience. I have lived and breathed being stuck for a really large part of my life in physical health, in personal relationships, in my business life. And for me to be able to move from stuck to unstoppable and scale a business from 0 to 7 figures, sell that business has been something that I think people have been quite inspired by. And, my number plates read Misfit. I have a pink convertible. I live and breathe the person that you are seeing. This is not a show. This is literally who I am. And I embrace all the authenticities and the nuances of having neurodivergent mindset.
So I'm incredibly excited for this conversation here. Like, and I think the reason I'm excited is like what I love about you is that like you live out loud, right? Like I'm just getting to know you, but like there's no way that I can't see you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what I love about it is like it's like you're not only do you own not only your space, but I get that you also own the space. So Outliers, the reason I'm saying this here, if you're listening to this on audio, you can't see this, so go watch it on YouTube, right? Love has put on here like a lower third, so you get to like see some of the things that are going on in the world, right? And I loved it because I was like, oh, like you don't need to worry about if someone else has their game together. You're like every space you walk into is your space. I love to like hear a little bit more about like how you navigate that. I think there's something here that's just like so wonderfully complete about how much you own who you are, and I'd love if you can just speak a little bit to that.
10 years ago, I definitely didn't own who I was. I wouldn't have even been able to tell you that the person that you see before you or are hearing right now actually existed in real life. I lived a life by the expectations, the values, and the standards of other people pretty much my entire life. I was brought up in a household as the oldest child of three. My father was in the military, my mum was a nurse. And as a child, I didn't get a lot of love and affection from my own father. My mum, absolutely outwardly affectionate. She's a nurse. That's what she did. She's like a living, breathing empath. But as a kid, I found it really challenging to fit in. I was constantly bullied. We changed schools because we had to move because of the military. And I didn't have any friends. I had a big bum, a big witch nose, and I developed very late in life. I bought my feminine traits. Like but so the thing is, what that forced me to do was to find a way to define myself through other ambitions. So at 15 years old, I actually started my first business, but that was a lot to do with trying to earn the love and respect of my dad. And I realized that when I did something great and I achieved something, my dad would then shower me with affection. He would tell me how proud he was of me. And it kind of started to subtly wire these patterns in my brain that working hard and achieving big things equaled worth. Does that make sense? right? So as a kid, this started to pattern itself all the way through my adolescence. Started my first business at 15 years old. Our school, we had to have standard issue school bags, and everybody's standard school bags looked exactly the same. And so kids were taking other school bags home from other kids. And I created this system called bag tag. So I got permission from the principal to use the school logo. And in my spare period, I would go around and get the names of people who wanted a bag tag. They would pay me $1.50 per tag. And I would go home, and on my computer, I had a template, and I'd put everybody's details in each individual bag tag, print them out, cut them up with a guillotine, put them through a laminator, punch a hole in them, put a zip tie on the back. And I made thousands and thousands of dollars. So, very entrepreneurial. That did come from my dad. I then went to university, got sick halfway through my degree. And it was interesting because being bullied as a child, I'd always sort of found a way to push through and find new ways of having to redefine myself. Because I wasn't popular, I, pushed myself into academia. I was really great at sport, doing all of these wonderful things, music, drama, acting, all of the things that I loved, but I never really felt like I belonged anywhere. When I went to university, I ended up meeting a guy that I would marry, and I got sick halfway through my degree. And it was odd because I didn't really know how to treat myself other than a victim. And my dad, he really pushed me down and told me to harden up, because that's the military way of life, swallow some cement and harden up. And I had to make the really tough decision to actually defer some of my study while I was very unwell. I got diagnosed with a condition called ulcerative colitis, and this would actually become the beginning of the journey that would take me down the path that I'm on now. So I ended up going back to university, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts with a major in IT, so information technology, for those of you playing along at home, and something called contemporary studies. So I had this really weird skill set. But upon graduation, Niiamah, I didn't have any confidence to work for anybody. I'd been offered 2 amazing jobs and career options, but I was really, really unwell. I had started to accumulate medical acronyms after my name. Not only did I have ADHD, which I was medicated for at the time, but PMDD. I had, all of these depressive traits. I then developed chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, and I was just this horrible, tired, stress head mess. And here I was still trying to achieve and achieve and achieve. And I ended up basically digging myself into a hole where my confidence was at an all-time low. I didn't have a lot of people in my social network. I had my husband, my boyfriend, who would be my husband at the time. And so I decided to go into business with my dad. We started in a business selling mobility equipment. Now, what mobility equipment are like, like Zimmer frames and old people's scooters and things for people with disabilities. And there was nothing like that in our area. And I've never had any experience with any of this stuff. But because I had this entrepreneurial spirit, always found ways of making things work, I just made a way to make that work. And so my father and I ran that business for about 8 years. And my health didn't really get any better. I gained about 15, 16 kilos, and I was told that I was just going to have to deal with my depression. I was going to stay on medication. I was going to be overweight, all by my doctors, who kind of pushed and pulled me from one person to the other. And I just realized that this was just going to be my life. So for about 8 years running that business, we kept doubling our turnover every 3 or 4 years. But I was really, really stuck. I think mentally, I wasn't very happy with my life. I felt very unfulfilled. My life was incredibly predictable. And look, I ended up marrying that boyfriend as my first husband. And we just had this really cozy vanilla life, right? I definitely wasn't this person. I was very conservative. I would wear collared shirts, 3/4 length pants. Nothing was bright. I didn't want to stand out. I was a bit of a wallflower. But then 3 really defining things happened. Absolutely changed the course of my life. The first thing was that my father and I had a physical altercation in my shop that resulted in him actually hitting me across the face with his hand. And so everything that I had built my life by, my dad's standards, my dad's expectations, the desire for love from my father, came crashing down in one fell swoop. Then my husband, 2 days after my 31st birthday, took his own life. Thank you. In that same moment, everything that I knew to be true and to be predictable and to be comfortable imploded. And then I got really sick and my grandpa died. This all happened within the space of a few months. And so I'd lost every paternal figure in my life. So I come from a very masculine driven strive, excellence, hustle, grind attitude. And I was just forced to really look at my life and go, wow, like, what am I even here for? And I can 100% say to you that my husband's suicide was the absolute best thing that ever happened to me, because it forced me to open my eyes to the fact that if my life was going nowhere, it's actually exactly where it would end. And the day that Brian died was the day that I saw that more clearly than ever. And so I did the thing that everybody does when they end up in a situation. That's a word that I made up. And I did something really irrational. And so I jumped all in because I was so stuck. I jumped so all in to trying to become unstoppable and trying to get unstuck. So I started going to the gym, and I would go there every night before closing time and just go on the treadmill. And, you know, then I started reading development books on self-help and stuff. But I eventually got introduced to lifting weights. And it was funny because at that time, this is before 24/7 gyms were here in Australia. We got them quite late, actually. The only people in the gym were like middle-aged, balding, stinky, sweaty men. And so I'm on the treadmill, and you've got all these guys down on the gym floor. And I was like, well, that's not where I live. But this lovely volunteer, I still see him every Christmas and for his birthday. He's in his 80s now. He came up to me. He was really good friends with my husband. My husband was very fit, very healthy. He was Chinese, Ukrainian, so mixed race, like gorgeous guy. Was wanting to model, wanted to do bodybuilding shows, but just didn't have the confidence, had some mental health challenges. This lovely volunteer introduced me to lifting weights. And so this opened this can of worms for me, Niiamah, because I actually started to speak to these guys, and I realized, oh my gosh, they're really positive. They're really nice people. And they were talking about things I've never, ever had a conversation with people about. We were talking about goal setting. We were talking about nutrition. We were talking about positive mindsets. And so I started to become part of a culture that had it just been so foreign to me up to that point. And all of a sudden, I started to create opportunities in my life. I started losing weight. I started lifting weights. I went from 1 kilo to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. And after 6 short months, I was feeling amazing. I'd met another guy who would subsequently become the husband I have now. And it was funny because I look back very fondly at those times, and I experienced a really rapid amount of change. And none of those male figures were in my life. I did it all on my own. You know, my father wasn't there, my grandfather wasn't there, my husband wasn't there. But I found all of these other people. And Dr. John Demartini talks about this, is that, you know, when we grieve the loss of something, we end up finding it in somebody else. And so I found this little tribe of guys to hang around with. And so I made the decision at the end of that year to start training for a bodybuilding show, which is like, if you'd known what I was like before, there's no way that could have been in my scope of possibility. So I feel like, what would be more irrational than standing on stage in something that leaves not very much to the imagination, being completely judged on aesthetic with no regard for what I'd been through, what I'd suffered, what I'd lost, how hard I trained, and what I'd sacrificed, and to be judged by a panel of strangers against a panel of strangers. Like, it's such a wild thing. Yet when people get stuck, they choose these sweeping, grand gestures to try and demonstrate to the world that they're doing something big. And they believe that the bigger and the more profound the thing that they want to do, the greater the transformation. And I've been there, right? So I ended up doing 13 bodybuilding shows in 14 months. Now, most people do one show every 2 to 3 years. So ADHD, very poor impulse control. But unfortunately, I ended up getting more sick, developed another autoimmune condition. They found a hole in my heart. I had heart surgery. They found a brain tumor. I had to go on medication for that. But I pushed through, as I always did. But I didn't end up in a great spot. So I got very, very sick. And it was funny, at the end of that little stint in my life, I realized that the space that I was in, even though it started in a very positive way, by the time I got to the end of that, at my bodybuilding career space, it's quite a toxic culture. What you do to get to that, the unsustainable practices you have of counting all your calories and starving yourself and overtraining and getting really caught up in your own world where you become selfish and lock out everybody else. I still had this business that I was running, even though my father wasn't in it. I had to hire staff and it scaled. But I realized that I needed to learn how to be a better coach than the coaches I'd had that had given me really bad advice and gotten me into that I actually had an eating disorder. So that got me into that poor mental health state. So it's funny because I believe that when you zig so far in one direction, sometimes you have to zag an equal amount in the opposite direction to find the mean and the meaning inside the mean, right? The average. And so this is where I started to pursue where I am now. And I started calling myself Loz. I just drew this line in the sand. I'm like, this is a person I want to embody. And I studied personal training. And then I realized that personal trainers couldn't speak to people about life. So then I studied life coaching. Then I studied nutrition. And then I studied 13 different things, overachiever traits coming straight out. But you know what? I did it for me search and research. And what I realized is that when I actually finally, for the first time in my life, started to embrace the authenticities of who I was and the nuances and the quirks and the things that made me feel alive, I started to attract all of these new people into my life. And people said to me, how did you go from being that person to this person? You're unrecognizable. I'm like, I don't know. I just did what I always do. But then the entrepreneur of me started pulling apart my process. And then I created a replicatable blueprint so that I could actually help people move from stuck to unstoppable by learning how to prioritize their health, fitness, and well-being with simplicity. And that is all I do now. I ended up selling that business that I owned with my father. And I had that business for 18 years. I actually sold that business very recently. I remarried. I have an amazing husband. He's 15 years my senior. He's a professional musician. And we have a lot of fun. He writes a lot of parody comedy music. And I get to be, the person that I love to be. I'm a professional speaker. I've written a book. I have conversations every day that light me up. I get to help people find something inside themselves that's probably been there for a long time, but they've never actually had access to it, and help people believe in themselves. And I also get to live my best life. So that was a very glittery, shiny, rainbow colored nutshell as to how I got here. But it's been a very, very catalytic journey. I recently just got diagnosed with 2 more brain tumors. So I'm currently on a treadmill. You can't see this. I still do everything I can. I am seeing a specialist very soon to find out what the next phase is for me. I'm not getting hung up by it. It has affected me significantly with my energy levels, but I tell you what, everything you go through has a silver lining, whether it's positive or negative. It's how you want to perceive it. And sometimes you have to choose to put your glasses on and squint for that damn silver lining, I tell you. And this is me squinting for the silver lining. It's actually helped me readjust my business, how I want to deliver my services, and simplify to amplify. And that's the premise of everything that I teach.
Laz, I appreciate you here, right? I want to take you in a number of different ways. So I want to pull out some things that goes along here. That last thing you said where like where like is found two more brain tumors. Like one of the things I really want to say like I respect about you is that like um you are what we see, if that makes sense. Like 'cause I get that you have
Mm-hmm.
like you've done the work to bring yourself into alignment around that, and at the same time I get from you that it's like what we see and like what is also happening beyond it is that like it's a choice. I feel like you're consistently making a choice to be. When you said like I chose the name Laws, like that, like I got like a chill up my spine here. I because I think there's a real element to all that of like continuously choosing you, right?
Yeah.
Um, so thank you for giving us letting us know about like your story here and seeing how you keep choosing like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like my like you like you have energy, you have this different going on, everything's pink. Like if y'all are not watching this on YouTube, like please just go over and see the video. Like it's a really cool thing, right? It's just really lived out loud. And you're also navigated like life around you isn't all pretty, right? Or and I really want to just like I want to capture. I thank you for letting us see that here. I thank you for being real about it. I'm wishing you all the best on that part of the journey too, the health journey as well.
Thanks, man.
It hits me hard. You started. I want to get into So one of the things I'm enjoying about here is like it's like you bring the positive, right? But it's rooted in like realness. Like you've lived life, right? You really live life. What is like what's something that most people wouldn't get if they wanted to play the same game of showing up authentically for themselves here? What's something that most people wouldn't get would be, let's call it an investment. You know, it's like it's almost like the hidden cost of it all. Like what's something that they wouldn't get like is an investment that you have to make in order to actually show up the way that you do, or like if for the
I think that's such a great question. And I think the investment in really choosing to embrace the person that you want to be, even if it's not the person that you feel that you actually are, is that the cost is that you're going to have to level up your circle of influence. And the people that may have got you to where you are right now, to that moment where there is a decision to branch off in another direction, or maybe really dive deep into a part of who you want to be, means that sometimes you actually have to leave people behind. And sometimes those people are people in your family, whether that's blood family, whether that's communal family. I look back at the journey and the people that I've surrounded myself with at various times in my life. And I've never had more amazing people in my life than I have now. I'm about to turn 40 and I'm having a big 40th birthday party. And it's like 80s, back to the 80s, fabulous fitness, right? So it's like Jane Fonda times 100, right?
Mm.
And it's going to be wild, but years ago when I tried to have a party, I remember like I wasn't able to get people to even embrace the theme or turn up. Now I have people coming out everywhere going, oh my God, I'm so excited because of the people. I mean, just a small example, the people that I'm surrounding myself with is as excited about a theme as I am.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
guess at a deeper level, when you find that soul tribe, that soul family, there is something really magnetic and really deep about embodying the weirdness that you might be avoiding in your life. And I think that we get really caught up trying to fit the standards that society impose on us because we want to be quote unquote entrepreneurs. We want to quote unquote be outliers. We're trying so hard to be misfits that we've actually missed the point of what it is that we are. And I work with a lot of young men with autism. I love it because I find that young men with autism aren't that different to middle-aged women who are entrepreneurs. They have very similar nuances. And what I love is that these young men specifically, they found such challenge in trying to find their tribe. But because I'm so open and transparent about how I am and who I am and what I would love to see for them, we just have this amazing mutual respect for each other. And I've been able to connect them in with each other as well. So they're not feeling alone or isolated. And it's such a beautiful thing to witness because I myself have experienced that in my life. So the cost is maybe you have to leave behind some of the people that have gotten you to where you are today. And you know what? That's okay. Different
Mhm.
reasons, different seasons in a lifetime.
Like let's take that in here, outliers, because I think there's uh, you talked earlier about like fitting in. You talked earlier about like not really feeling like you belong. And part of the reason I call outliers and think it resonates with people is because there is that sense of I want to be with everyone, you know, and I don't want to be separate. I don't want to be like different, you know. I actually just want to be accepted and loved and cherished for who I am and with all this, right? That part I think is I see it. I'll like show up with entrepreneurs where I'm like, I spend time with you. I'm like, this is simple. Like it's very clear who you are and what and like and where you stand. And at the same time, there's uh, when we come back and we connect, they go out in the world and they're effort in. I'm like, you're putting in so much work to do this. I would be curious about your experience with it, especially like for because I don't know, I feel like any outlier that's watching this might be like, okay, if I'm on the cusp, if I'm on that crossroad and I get a chance to choose to be my version of Lauren or Loz, you know, like where do I want to go play with it? You know, I'm really curious if you can speak to that component of in my mind, effort in less in order to
Yeah.
simply be you.
Yeah, Yeah. So simplify to amplify is the premise of everything I do. I mean,
Yeah.
I literally have that on the back of my phone, right? That's the name of my book, and it says simplify to amplify. You can't see that if you're not watching YouTube version of this, but I think try it on, like try the thing on. I hated pink. You would not believe this. I would never ever have worn pink ever. Growing up, I actually wanted to be a boy. I hated being a girl. My mum would buy all boys' clothes for me. I hung out with lots of girls who were like me, and they're all, uh, they're all gay. Like I had a circle of friends like that. So that was really normalized in my culture as a kid. And it's funny, I hated being called Loz as a kid. Absolutely hated it with a passion. But when I got to that really critical moment in time where it was like, I don't even think I realized that's what I was doing. It's only in hindsight you realize that you're at that crossroad. It was just trying things on, and I'm not talking literally, I'm talking figuratively. So I started calling myself Loz, seeing how it felt, and it felt really ick at first when people started referring me to as Loz, and I was like, oh, okay. But eventually I got a little bit used to it. And when people ask me how I prefer to be referenced, I always say Loz now, because Lauren feels so far back in the past, such a different chapter in my life. But then trying on the little things, and I think pink, I always say sometimes you're a heart-shaped peg in a round hole. Sometimes you're trying to force yourself in, and you come from a place of love. And I live out loud, but I love out loud as well. Do you know what I mean? So I think that pink chose me because pink, pink represents so much love and kindness. And there's something about that color that somehow morphed into my being. I mean, everything I have is pink with my business, and it's crazy, right? Like, I'm like, how the heck did that happen? But I leaned into it a bit, and then I leaned into it a bit, and then I tried it on, I turned some things off, and then I went for it. Don't do it in one fell swoop.
There's a couple things like interestingly when you talk about the pink, I'm like, oh, I get this. For me, the color ended up being yellow, right? I haven't committed to the level that you've committed, so I will give you that. But out of nowhere, it was just like, oh, it's yellow because I like joy had become real for me, like a very real way. Like, well, there's and there was just so much about that color that all of a sudden felt like it was like the most authentic representation of like me and what I stood for. And every time I saw it, it brought something to me. But beforehand, it just like it wasn't a thing. And the fact that
Yeah.
it was very low on my list of colors. I'm like, you can't even see it when you use crayon. Like, why? I have two young kids, Loz, and like
True.
we'll go out to dinner, and there's always like a yellow crayon. I'm like, why do they do this? Why do they include the yellow? It's a great color, but like, why is it here? Um,
Actually.
exactly. So that part like really like it hits in a way that I didn't expect it to hit.
Yeah.
Um, it's so interesting because part of what I hear you saying is that like the you who you are, well, I would like there's two parts. One of them is like the you who you are is not the who you expected yourself to be, right? And that feels like it like the distinction for me here is not that is that like it wasn't like, oh, I just became free to be myself and I'm exactly who I always envisioned myself. I got my colors, I got this there, like this is it. I'm living that life. It's like no, you broke free in many different ways and then saw who you were. It almost feels like
Yeah.
a lot like can you expand on that?
I sure can. And it's interesting what you said about the yellow as well, because my book cover is actually yellow, and I would
Mm,
never have chosen that color. And it's funny because when my publishing house like chose my front cover, they gave me all of these options. But the logical part of that to choose a yellow color cover, a yellow colored cover, was that a client I was working with at the time was a book buyer in a past life, and she said, if you have a book with a yellow cover and hot pink writing in your industry space, if you're talking about self-help, nobody has books in that color. Everybody
mm.
uses greens and they use blues and they use
Yep.
pinks. So use some yellow. So I started using yellow too, and it brings such joy, right? But I think when we look at the constructs of who we are, and we look at like the Eastern construct of identity and the Western construct of identity, They are very different. And I think growing up, I'd always been sort of taught that, you were born as this blank slate, this blank canvas. As you go through life and you cultivate experiences and relationships, you're building this image, this artwork of you, and then that's how you become, right? But if we look at the Eastern construct of identity, it's very interesting. And they speak of, we are all like big natural rocks that come from the earth in all shapes and forms. And as our life goes by and we develop experiences and create relationships, we chip away at this piece of earth. We're chipping away, chipping away. And what we find is on the inside is this beautiful gem, this beautiful rare thing that is actually you, that's been there the whole time. And I've really embraced that paradigm shift of understanding that's how I've actually found myself. It's not that I've developed and constructed this identity. I definitely feel like, rather than allowing things to define me, and these experiences to define who I am, it's really helped to refine that rock, that rare piece of earth, to go, actually inside this has been this person all the time. And it's such a beautiful way to actually look at how you can be and who you are, because it's there the whole time. It's just that you're allowing your experiences to soften it and find the thing. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. So like, it's cool. It's not the way that I've been thinking about it, but like it makes me think of what I've heard people talk about, like Michelangelo, right? And they're like David was always in the rock. It was just my job to free him, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't
Right.
like I didn't like create it. It was just like it was always there. I just got rid of everything that wasn't that, you know? And I feel like it's a cool like way of going about it, where it's like it feels like it's more of like the process of letting go, trying out, seeing if it fits, seeing if it like, and I get this like deep level of openness, right? Because what I don't hear from this is like a level of clinging on, or like having to make you're like absolutely not. Yes, no, not that. Um, and you brought it up earlier when you're talking about trying things out, and I actually don't. It was so refreshing, and I'm going to use the word unique, and I'm not trying to use the word unique. And the reason I don't try and do that is that I have found that like, but it's that which is honest ends up being unique, because you are like the only person on this planet who is you, you know? And so it was very honest. And I think the reason that it really struck me is like, when I right now I don't feel like I'm playing like as much of a personal development game as I was in like the last like 5 to 10 years. Now I'm like, okay, I like who this person is now. Like, what am I gonna do with it? Um, and almost all that entire time was me just playing games, trying things out, finding out things about myself. Like the reason yellow became a thing is because I realized that like joy was my thing. And the reason I found out that joy was my thing was because someone came to me and they said, Niiamah, they actually said, Nemo, you were really intimidating, right? So you might have caught that there. I'll talk about that in a bit. But like, you're really intimidating. And I grew up as a black man in the U.S. and I have a story and relationship to the word intimidating, as in you were scary. You're and I did everything that I could to not be that story. All right. And I remember
Yeah.
going out to dinner with people. Like I was in like a coaching environment. So there's like people who were willing to look at things differently. And I'll never, his name's Townsend Wardlaw. He looked at me and he said, I said, can you believe that this person said I was intimidating? And they're like, yeah, you're incredibly intimidating. So much about you is intimidating. Even your joy is intimidating. And it was one of those things like you see like in a movie where you're like getting ready to like back, like jump on, like, yeah. And I'm like, what? Like literally stopped in my tracks. And I think there's something now how to like go and experiment. Like, what does it look like to be intimidating? What if I tried that out and see like what new things would I learn about myself? And to me, it was all about like how do I expand my range and give myself more options to be me rather than to simply I don't know, be the opposite of what everyone else thought I was supposed to be or whatever it was. It was just like just allowing myself to be. I'm curious what comes up for you as I share this, Loz, and I can talk to you about the Nemo thing at some point too. But
I
yeah,
love it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that I think people always wait to be invited to be this person, whereas like we just need to invite ourselves to the party and
yeah,
choose to go, you know what, I'm just going to try that on and see what happens. And you can back out of it eventually if it doesn't feel right, but you may find that parts of those traits that you really fall heavily into, okay, maybe at the extent and the magnitude that you went in really hard with, like this intimidating version of yourself, for example. I embrace this really hyper feminine version of myself. Doing bodybuilding shows and bikini shows was kind of my version of what you just explained. I I spent a life not being feminine typically externally at all, not even understanding the balance between yin and yang energy. And then when you're sort of thrust into the spotlight of doing bikini shows and bodybuilding shows where you've got to be soft and feminine, I did all the things. Like I had fake nails, I had hair extensions, fake lashes, tan, like constantly becoming this person. I got, breast implants. And it's funny because I look at that hyper feminized version of myself, and everything I learned about being feminine, I learned from drag queens, right? Like I would watch RuPaul's Drag Race and try and understand, like, how do these this male gaze, how does this male gaze perceive femininity, and how are they really amplifying that to a level that's completely exaggerated? And so I tried that on for a period of my life, and I was like, whoa, this is so fun, this is so weird. Like I had no idea who that person was, but I kind of found elements that I really enjoyed leaning into. And I think understanding at an energetic level, and I'm not talking about a completely peripheral or superficial level, that there were parts of that feminine energy, which is to lean into things like surrender, lean into things like stillness, lean into things like it's okay to not have to work all the time and be pushing and striving and hustling. It's actually okay to be gentle and kind to yourself. And so I think that external view of femininity and that internal embodiment of femininity were really two separate processes that I went through, but I had to kind of go to that nth degree. Like you
mhm,
said, be intimidating. How do you embrace intimidation? Like, whoa, okay. But then find yourself back at whatever that balance, that equilibrated point is. And, for a period of time, you'll look back and be like, wow, I was really intimidating. Wow, I was really hyper feminine. But, it didn't land well 100%. And so, I still look quite feminine. I still feel quite masculine at times, but I've learned to understand and expand my consciousness to the fact that actually simplify to amplify, less is sometimes more. And that attitude, that masculine energy attitude that's always gotten me to where I needed to go, isn't really serving me anymore because of my health, right? So my health deserves time to relax. And I think that if you realize that sometimes you have to, as I said, zig so far in one direction that you zag an equal amount in the opposite direction, that is okay. Figure it out. It's life is not linear. The hero's journey is never linear, ever.
yeah. This is really resonating. It's resonating in a lot of different ways, and the I think you're the first person I remember having conversations with, at least that it's talking about the experimentation of self. You
Yeah,
know, um, uh, I I really like I rarely talk about this. It's like go try it out. Go see and give yourself the space to go beyond to to test in and see what comes next. And then it's like we're stretching out into this new element and then we'll end up, as long as we're not pushing out for over extended periods of time, we end up
yeah,
relaxing into what matters or what actually feels real. At this time here, we're about to start wrapping up this conversation, but I've been enjoying it. I um I about 4 months ago, 5 months ago, at this time of this recording, I decided I was going to go all in on my podcast, and I'm going to use that to go create new clients and meet new people. And I'm like, everyone, podcast is a wonderful invitation. And I can. It just felt like a great way to I'm like, this would be my lead magnet, right?
yeah,
And what ended up happening was that as I started doing, I was like, oh, I can do more. And so I got to the height of it for me was we were doing 3 days a week with about 6 hours a day. Let's just use five for math purposes, but 5 hours a day, and six people on each. I was doing a podcast panel, right? I still do.
Yeah.
End up being today. It was just us two. So I was like meeting 30 new people a day, and then 3 days a week. So about like 100 people, like new people come into my world every single week.
Insane.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right. And like now, if you look at it, like I'm very comfortable being like, oh, cool. Like it's just one. It's like it's one person. Like let's have that conversation. But I needed to stretch myself, or I wanted to stretch myself, and say like,
Yeah.
what if I make that my new norm? And for 3 months, it was like just call after call after call after call after call. But it got like I found out something about myself that felt really meaningful. And if I ever want to, I can go back to it. It's not hard. And but like there's new ideas. I'm like, what if I'm not the one doing it? What if I brought other people along? Like there's new things
Yeah.
that came on and started to play out. So I'm just very appreciative of this element of like it doesn't have to be permanent. And if you're going to
Absolutely
do it,
not.
why not just go all in and see, and then allow yourself to then calibrate? Because then at least you know you're like, I've done hyper feminine, like almost as far feminine as I can go with it. Like I'm not missing out on anything. Like I know I've done it. Like this is what feels right.
Yeah. And you can choose to go back if you need to. And I think that that self-regulation of working out, okay, there exists extremes in the world and there's polarizing ideas, but also like it's a spectrum. You get to choose. I mean, go look at my wardrobe. You'll see the spectrum of all of the people that I am in my wardrobe. You know what I mean?
Nice, nice, nice. Loz, I'm deeply appreciative of you. I think it's the right time for us to start wrapping up this conversation, but I think, do you mind if I just express my gratitude for you?
Oh, that's so kind of you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a little bit more though. Are you good with that?
Go for it.
All right, cool. So, what I like, I'm really grateful because, um, we're just getting to know each other. And at the same time, like, I think that your willingness to tell your story, your willingness to be open, your willingness to be true in it, and also the work that you've done to be able to tell it in such a compelling way. Like as you were talking, I'm like, we're just gonna let this ride. Like I want outliers to get to know your story. And it's because you're telling a story that's, you've taken the time to make that story compelling. I really just like I really respect that. You know what I'm saying? You don't just get there. There's work that's involved, and as we're wrapping up this conversation, I'm realizing I'm like, oh, I'm gonna miss Loz. Like we just like met, but I'm like, oh, I could do more of this. I could do a whole lot more of this. Um, and so I'm gonna actually use that as I want to make sure I say that to you because it is a
Thank
deep,
you.
deep felt feeling there. Um, I can imagine there are other outliers who are watching and listening to this who feel the same here. And so let me ask you, if someone wanted to go deeper in your world, right? And they're like, I want to spend more time with you. What are the best ways for them to do that? Why don't you give us like two or three ways for them to do that?
Yeah, sure. So the first way, if you want to get to experience the crazy life enthusiast that I am, social media, Instagram, there's videos, there's reels, there's funny things, there's serious things, there's deep dives, and there's conversations. So you can find me at Loz Antonenko. You spell it as you say it. You say it as you spell it. It'll be down the bottom of this screen. But also my website, which is lozlife.com. I have a lot of really great solutions. There's videos, there's interactive content. I'm actually about to open up an academy in the next few months. So I'm transferring my library of Loz to an online membership group-based coaching platform like you. I haven't done group-based coaching in a long time, but it's something I want to lean back into. Love one-on-one coaching, but right now it's not serving me in my life the way I need it to.
Yeah.
And YouTube, you can head over to the Loz Life YouTube channel. So we're about to upload a heap of content to that over the next 3 months. Some really cool but serious stuff. And you can reach out to me. I don't bite at all. And it's, I love chatting to new people like you. I chat to hundreds of people every single week and I love it. It lights me up. It fills me up. There is no such thing as a silly question. I will answer questions about anything. You can ask me anything and I might even give you a shout out on socials if you ask me something
Biceps.
really great.
I love it. I love it here. Allies, take the time. Like, I'm gonna make a request of you. Like, if there's something in this episode that really called you, like, please take some time and go share this out there. Let people know about this here. Like, well, this conversation, I'm like, I want people to know about it. And if in Outliers, if there's one person in your life that you think would really benefit from hearing lots of stories, hearing the conversation that took place, like, can you join us in the one person, one conversation at a time initiative, where we just like take the time and take these episodes and make them into a gift for someone who's out there that just need to hear this story rather than being like splayed everywhere. I don't know. There's just something in my mind that comes to like that feeling of getting the text message and saying, "Hey, I heard this and I thought of you specifically." Like take a listen. So if you're down to join us on that, it would mean the absolute world to me. All right.
Amazing.
Yeah, Loz, we're gonna end up here. End up the conversation known that outliers are taken care of. I have a question for you that is just for you. So, what's an insight or takeaway that you are taking for yourself from this conversation?
Being able to truly express myself as I am with no filters and no censors is such a blessing. And I wish there were more amazing podcast hosts like you that were just open to having like a genuine conversation with a complete stranger located on the other side of the world. I think that it always slightly adds a little bit more faith that I have in humanity, because sometimes the world gets you down, especially when if you decide to look at mainstream media, it can be quite catastrophic on your mental health. And so conversations like this really are refreshing. So I just want to thank you. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to chat to you.
Well, I
And I come
feel
to you from the future because I'm in Australia, right?
yeah. Yeah. I lived for several years out in Singapore, so I get that. I get that right there. Time travel is a thing, y'all. And the
Right.
worst part, the best part about this is that we left this message for you in the past. Think about that. All right. All right. Well, with all that being said here, thank you, Laws. Thank you for living the life that you do. Thank you for bringing it out this way here. And Outliers, till the next time we talk, remember this: be you on purpose. Journey on.